Hey everyone, I'm TJB Chris. Welcome back. It may not be September anymore, but we're finishing out our series from Tandy, Storage on the 8s. Anyway, tonight is part 4 and the final part of my series, Storage on the 8s, where I'm going to be talking about bringing it all together. You've got yourself your emulated floppy drives, maybe even some emulated hard drives, whether it's the modern reproduction solution or whether it's one of a mix of controller and interface boards and modern emulators, and you want to get started with the software that's available to you now on the Model 2 archive. Well, tonight I'm going to cover just that. We're going to cover 3 different combinations. The first we're going to cover is a floppy-only system using my TRS-80 Model 12 here, and we're going to use emulated disks on my Lotharek, that's HXC based. Then we're going to move right back onto the Model 12 and we're going to install the Fred 4.8, and we're going to start up with TRSDOS version 4.2.6, and that is on the Model 2 archive as well. And finally, we're going to move on to a more grown-up hard disk-based system. We're going to move over to the TRS-80 Model 16B with the DREM and internal 15 meg controller interface board, and we're going to install XENIX 3.3 with the development system. Straight from the archive, no floppy-based installs, this won't be long and drawn out. And then, as a bonus, we're going to upgrade it to XENIX 3.4 where it should be, and while we're doing that, I'll reiterate the great benefits of XENIX 3.4. For those of you who aren't initiated, XENIX 3.4 is a new XENIX release. That's right, new. 35 years later, we got a release of XENIX to go along with some of the great hardware from Tandy Emeritus, like the MMU, the real-time clock, and so on. And that version of XENIX has a lot of great niceties. Even if you don't have the TE hardware and you have a XENIX 3.3 box, you should consider upgrading. Alright, so a couple of things to get into before we get into this. First off, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the basics of connecting these things up with Shugart-style floppy disks and the basics of hard disks of the era. Going into depth about those is beyond the scope of this, and we'll turn it from a tutorial into a slog. I'm assuming emulated disks all around, floppy, hard disk, so no real disks tonight, with one minor exception where I'm going to show you kind of an interplay when we get to XENIX, where I need to shuffle things around a bit so I can install from the emulator. And finally, I'm going to assume that if you have an 8-inch system with either emulated or real hardware, that you have got the machine in working order, everything is connected, and that your machine passes the TRS-80 diagnostics. And I can't emphasize this enough. For this to be successful, your machine has to be in good working order, and the TRS-80 diagnostic software that's available on the archive, along with its matching manual, is highly recommended. The manual has a lot of detail about testing these systems out, what the diagnostics do, what and how they test, and they're really a pretty good primer, honestly, for reading about the hardware and everything else. The other thing I'm going to assume is that if you have any machines with open technical bulletins, and this is especially important for hard disks, I'm going to assume that you've applied any of the Tandy technical bulletins. All the various bulletins are available on the Model 2 archive, and there are a bunch. Every piece of software we're going to get tonight is going to come from the Model 2 archive. So I think that's going to do it. As a quick primer, if you have floppy-only systems, TRSDOS 2.0b is what we're going to be working with tonight. And you're going to want to make sure that your floppy emulator is wired up to drive 0. If you're using an HXC-based emulator, as I am, you're going to want to make sure you have the HXC software downloaded, because we're going to need that, and you'll see that in this video. Otherwise, I'm going to hope that your floppy emulator is connected and you're familiar with it, and you know how to convert the disks into whatever way you've got to do that. Moving on to hard disks, the different releases of TRSDOS-II version 4.2 depend on the controller and interface combinations and drive combinations, so you have to be careful there. Generally speaking, if the third digit ends in an even number, like 4.2.6 or 4.2.0, that supports the 8X300 based controllers, so 5 and 12 meg, early 15 and 8 meg drives. If you have a WD1010 based controller, and that is the internal interface board like in my 16B, or later 15, 35 and 70 meg hard drives, you want TRSDOS 4.2.5, but quite frankly, you should just go with TRSDOS 4.4 because it works with all but the 8 meg systems. So hopefully the graphic that was up on the screen while I've been talking about that helps. There's a lot to this, and again, if there's any detail you need, please check out the previous videos in the series. I've covered it quite well there. Alright, let's move over to my TRS-80 Model 2 and let's get TRSDOS 2.0 from the archive and boot her up. And first off, of course, we want to start here at the Model 2 archive. We'll go into Software and Tandy, and then I like to search for TRSDOS in the find bar. Just hit Control F if you're on a Windows machine, and you can search for TRSDOS here. We'll download the TRSDOS 2.0b image, pull down the file, and get that saved onto my disk. And now that we have our file, we're going to use the HXC floppy emulator software to load the image that I've just downloaded here. I've got it in my Storage on the 8s disks folder, And we're going to be selecting TRSDOS-II.0b. And you can see I've got the other images we'll be using later in this episode. Pull down TRSDOS-II.0b. All you have to do is load it and then click the export button. Choose your destination, which we're going to choose to be drive D, which is where my SD card is. And we're going to save it right into the directory there. Alrighty, let's boot her up. And you can see I've removed the SD card. That's because with pretty much all TRS-80 and Tandy systems of the era, the manuals specifically state that you should not start them up with a floppy drive in them. Now, these cards are a little different, and you could probably, if you back up your files, who cares, I guess. But it may not even be an issue, but abundance of caution in just having that drilled into my head. And I know, I'm going to boot this thing up. I know other YouTubers do it, and they just jam the disks in, turn them on and off like it's an Apple IIe or some DOS machine somewhere. But no, you can't do that. All the manuals specifically tell you you shouldn't do that. Take the disk out before you turn it off. Turn the machine on before you put the disk in. All right, TRSDOS-II.0b is booting, and that's my public service announcement for the day. Just trying to save your data, folks. Like I say, with these, if you back up your images and whatever, and if you're not really backing them up, you can get another image. But if you have data you care about or program you're writing, you're going to care when it disappears. Let's just go, I'm going to pick a time. Okay, and there we are. We're in TRSDOS. Now, this is just a basic TRSDOS system disk, as you saw me download. So, I mean, it just has the basic utilities. There's, patch, format, terminal, basic. There's a memory test, of course, the thin line, unthin do files for the thin line drive patches. And, of course, our old friend, basic. It's not Passaic. That's Passaic. That's going to be my programming language. Just like reverse Pig Latin. Here we go. And, it's my normal basic. I can write a little program here. 10 print. Hello, you rummy buzzard. 20. Go to 10. Run. And of course, many of you may realize or know already that Hello, you rummy buzzard has a special significance in Tandy lore. And I actually told that story in a video ages ago. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. If not, don't. But otherwise, yep, it's basic. Now, it's not exactly, level 2 basic, but there's a lot of graphics commands are missing. No peek and poke, no imp and out. Functions for Z80 port I/O, but otherwise it has a lot of the same stuff and some additional power that comes to the business system. So it's a good basic. I wish I had the stuff they could have put in there and didn't. Anyway, and there's of course a terminal program on here, and I can just setcom one of the ports here. There's 2 serial ports on every 8-inch system, A and B. So I'm just going to say A equals 9600, 8, none, 1. And there we go. And fun fact, you have to disable the port before you can change the settings, otherwise you'll get an error of 48, I think. Yep, you'll get that. Anyway, now let's run the terminal. And, I've got the operating system running here, and I've got, the OS disk, but if you're going to use application programs with this, you don't need to download TRSDOS 2.0. In fact, don't. You just download the application program that you want from the archive. That almost all Radio Shack applications have TRSDOS installed on them. And in fact, you don't want to boot from an operating system disk and swap. That's not really a thing with these machines. It's not like, a DOS machine where you boot DOS-II and then you drop your copy of WordPerfect in there or something. In this case, the operating system that's on the application diskette is the best one to use, and you don't want to boot TRSDOS 2.0b and find out that your application has a different operating system on there. At least you'll get weird behavior and, might freeze or something. At worst, it could corrupt your data, so don't do it. You're better off just saving yourself an extra step and just going from the application program. Anyway, this is the terminal. It's very vanilla. It doesn't have anything fancy about it. It can do text file transfers and nothing more. No ANSI, no VT, no nothing. But if you're doing, you're calling like level 29, it's perfect. The data carrier lost actually does illustrate a good point. These machines all, at least with TRSDOS and XENIX, really rely on the hardware handshake lines for the serial port. And if you don't have a cable or the other end doesn't use those lines, you've just got a simple 3-wire serial solution, this isn't going to work. So you're either going to need to break out those lines and fool the machine, or connect it to something that does use those hardware handshake lines. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to send data. And this isn't connected to anything anyway, so it's not going to work. All right, let's quit the terminal. Yeah, see all that little crap I typed. And that's pretty much TRSDOS. There are other operating systems available. CP/M is available for this machine on floppy disk. You can play with that. Obviously, that's more tolerant to the swap for applications thing. But even then, same with LS-DOS, which actually, let's look at LS-DOS. Let's go to model 12 here. And we'll go down to, let's see, LS-DOS single-sided. I'm going to push the old reset button here. And you can even hear the head steps sound just like you're booting on a Model 4. It's kind of surreal, actually. 10, 10, and this won't go up to 24, so I think it'll go to 06. I'm just going to call it 1930. And there we are. And this takes commands in lowercase, so I can turn off caps. This is your old familiar Model 4 LDOS, or LS-DOS, converted to run on the Model 12. And it includes all of your favorite features of LS-DOS. Excruciatingly difficult serial port setup, for example. All right, and I can setcom baud equals 9600, word equals 8, stop equals 1, equals off. I don't know why it says COM-DVR not installed. Well, let's see, does COM start? If COM-DVR is really not installed, COM won't start. Oops. Now, LS-DOS is COM, doesn't care about the hardware handshake lines, or at least you can turn them off. So that would work. I mean, there's nothing connected anyway, so it's still not going to go anywhere. But hey. And of course, I can hold escape 8. On the Model 4, that was the clear key. There's no clear key on these keyboards, so escape is it. And if I want to exit, I can escape shift equals. And that'll take me back out to LS-DOS ready. The neat thing is Model 4 Basic comes on this. So you can program in Model 4 Basic or convert your programs over to this. And so much so that it even says Basic 112 for TRSDOS version 6, because this Basic was originally written for Model 4 TRSDOS version 6, which was itself a rebrand of LS-DOS for Radio Shack. The Model 4 came out. Big hoopla, Radio Shack uses outside operating system. Woo-hoo. And of course it has all the other LS-DOS commands and device functionality and everything else that is there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But that's another operating system. You can download it and play with it. Model 4 applications that conform specifically to LDOS system calls should work on here. There is a text editor on here, I believe. So you can go and run those, but anything that tries to go directly to Model 4 hardware, or anything like that doesn't strictly use LS-DOS system calls, will explode. So here, TED. So there we are. There's TED. That's the guy that Skylar White fucked. Breaking Bad fan. Anyway, okay, that's it. So that's floppy operation with the Model 12. It's really that easy. In fact, I just kind of showed some of this stuff off because you got your image, you made your image, you stick the disk in, you boot the machine up, and lo and behold, you're off to the races. So go out there, play with those applications. They're on the Model 2 archive, or just play with the operating systems. Go out, have fun. Now let's move on to the Fred, right back here on the same Model 12. Okay, back to the Model 2 archive. Let's get the Fred image. We're going to go back to software, search for TRSDOS, but this time add the -II to it for TRSDOS-II. And because the Fred emulates the WD-1010 controller, we're going to go for 425, not 426. And in 425, you're going to find an HD Images folder, and in there a Fred 48 folder, F48. And we'll download the hard40 file, and once this file is downloaded, you're going to go ahead and save this to the root of your SD card with this exact name, no extensions, just hard4-0. Here we are at the Model 12. You can see I've got the Fred on top of it, all connected up nice. I'll give you a little detail as to how this is connected in just a second. I've got my SD card here, but before I get that put in there, let's take a walk around back and let's see how exactly this is connected. All right, around back here, I'm just going to pop off the cover. Now, you'll recall this is the machine that has my card cage and the Tandy Emeritus card cage in it. So that's that. Pull the cover over here. And here, this cable here is the Fred, and it is connected to the hard disk interface board here. I'll pull this out briefly. And this is the Ian Maverick reproduction here. I might have to disconnect these cables for a bit. Yep, okay. And this is the Ian Maverick reproduction board. And this is an excellent board. This is the Extra 16K. Now, because this is a Model 12, it is put in the appropriate place. Please check my hard disk video for details on that. All right, with that back in the machine, and of course I got my graphics card here. Power for this is actually supplied by this cable here, which runs around to this AC adapter that I have that I got on Amazon. And this is one of those AC adapters that has a Molex connector on it. You can power this from the inside of the machine, but because these power supplies require calibration under full load, I don't like to mess with them once I get them dialed in, because it means taking the machine apart, and other than checking on them once in a while, I prefer to power these things externally. And this is an area where I know there's going to be people that disagree, but that's my approach, and it seems to work well. So that's it, pretty much. Both of these, the Fred and the interface board you just saw, are both available now from Ian Maverick. So I'll put a link to his eBay store on the video description, but I highly recommend you get in touch with him. He does a nice job building these. He's easy to work with and just a good guy all around, and he makes quality hardware. So I definitely recommend you go check him out. And no, this isn't sponsored. I paid for these, so I can say what I want, and I have nothing but good things to say. All right, well, let's get back around and let's boot her up. Okay, I'm going to try and see if I can get this to show for you. It might not. These LEDs, this one here, this yellow one on this unit, this one on your right is the activity LED. When you put the card in, if the image is recognized, it'll flash once. This here is actually a blue LED. It'll flash when there's writes. So let me see if I can get this to show up on camera, and quite frankly, it probably won't. I'm going to slide my card in. Now you'll recall that I've got the file on here, just hard 4-0, as taken from the archive, and it should be that name. And I don't know if that actually came through or not, so we're just going to boot it up and see what happens. Unfortunately, with the light here in the room, it kind of drowns out the LEDs and things like that, but I mean, it takes a lot of light to shoot video that doesn't look like complete butt, and in here, that's difficult. All right, I've removed the SD card from the Lothrop because we don't want a floppy boot, and let's power her up. And the first thing we should see is the screen should immediately clear despite the lack of floppy disk. And here we go, we're booting up. And there we go. We're booted up. TRSDOS version 4.2.5. And today's date, I'm just going to get down here, is, again, 10/10. Oh, the beep that I love so much, 2024. And it is 19.54. And there we go. We have a working... Oh, hold on. First things first. This is a stock image off the archive, so my click off isn't there. I could build me a startup file to do that. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to turn off the clicker. And now, if you hate the clicker and you have one of these machines, you're going to know how to, automatically. Let's do this. There's a file utility on here called build. And I'm going to build startup. Okay, and it's just going to be click off, enter, CLS, and I'm done. Now, auto startup, and we can test out. There we go. Okay, let's see if this works. Reset. Oops, just bumped the camera. Gotta watch where your elbows go. There we go. And once again, okay, you're going to get the click at the date because there's no stopping that. But it should do startup error 31. Oh, I'm a dumbass. Auto do startup, you dummy. There we go. See, I'm a dummy. This isn't OS 9, you dummy. You actually have to do it as a do file. On OS 9, if you have a text file with commands, it's like any other shell script. You can just run it. A little color computer lore for you. Who doesn't want to watch TRSDOS boot 3 times? There we go. Now again, can't avoid the clicks at the date. See, there you go. Now everything goes perfect and I won't edit it out. And there we go. We're CLS. No more click. Beautiful. And again, this is a basic install of the operating system. The difference here is now you can install programs to this. So some programs like Scriptset 3.0 have an install script that'll copy it right to the hard drive. Others you can F-copy. Be careful though, with hard disk operating systems, many applications require patches. And so you're going to want to look through either the applications manual, which will probably accompany it on the archive, or you're going to want to look through the hard disk manuals or the TRSDOS manuals, because some of the TRSDOS-II operating system manuals also explain this. And it gives you patch commands that you have to type. Some programs will be nice enough to include them on a file. You can do like a do file that will patch, like HERS 50 for patching TRSDOS, and most won't. So the Radio Shack documentation will be there. Unfortunately, Where you'll find that is going to be dependent on the particular application, so I can't give you any one-stop shop. As far as I know, there's not a central location for that. But of course, basic is here. It's your same basic it always is, you know, for x equals 1 to 60. Print x semicolon, next. And there we go, computer count to 60. Woohoo! System to get back to TRSDOS, and terminal is there, but of course I haven't set up the communications port. It started anyway, all right. By the way, if you're on SETCOM by default, it will disable both ports. And if you do SETCOM A, oops, forgot to do the, with no parentheses, it should set you up as 371, which it did. And that's it. That's how easy it is to get started. Just for the sake of fun here, where did I put my SD card? Let's install or fcopy something over. I'm going to try and stay out of the frame here. Model 12, what have I got here? Let's copy Omniterm over. I think, let me just look here. I think there's an all option for this. Yep. Do I need the, you need the curly braces. Let's do this. Source disk ready. Well, here we are. That only took 5 minutes. Interestingly enough, the graphics commands, gload, grongros, gcls are on there. That's interesting. I don't know why that is. But if we take a look at drive 4 now, which is our hard drive, as you'll recall, now I have Omniterm and the text editor on there. And there we go. So now I have Omniterm on my hard disk. And yeah, we're good to go. I can do, I think F1 will take me to the menu. Yep, I can set my UART up here, you know, 9600, 8 none 1, fine. Port A is good. And F1 will take me back to the terminal. And we're here. There's nothing connected, of course, so nothing's going to happen. And if I want to exit, I can go to F1 for commands, X, and I can key to DOS. And that's how easy it is to get started. If you've got yourself a Fred 4.8 and you've got yourself the 5/12 meg interface board, also known as the Type 2 HDA, you can get started. And both of these pieces of hardware, as of this recording in October 2024, are available from Ian Maverick. So go check out his store and give him your money. All right, now we're going to move on to the last configuration. I'm going to move on to the Model 16B, where we're going to use the DREM, and we're going to load a copy of XENIX 3.2 from the Model 2 archive, complete with development system, and we're going to upgrade it to XENIX 3.4. And finally, let's get XENIX. Under the software section, you'll find it in the XENIX section. Even though it came from Tandy, all XENIX software is in there. And you're going to be looking for the XENIX multi-user operating system. If you're using an older version of the machine, or an older 6 MHz board or something without the PAL upgrade, TRSDOS-II will work. But any of the later machines with the 8 MHz boards or the PAL upgrade, you want the later ones, 700-3039. We're going to download 3.3 with the development system. You'll find that under the hard disk images in the DREM folder. We're going to download both of these files. First, the disk file, which is the binary disk image. And we're going to click on the download button for that. And sometimes GitHub likes to wait on these longer raw files. I'm not sure why that is, but the file will come down. And then we're going to go back and we're going to get the configuration file. And that's going to tell DREM the geometry of the disk, the first sector number, all that great information that you need to tell a DREM. Then we're going to copy these files to the root of the SD card. And we're going to edit DREM2.ini, scrolling down to the section where the first hard disk is defined and changing the name of the disk image to match that of the image we just downloaded. Once that's done, we move on to the next step. Now that we've got the disk files on the SD card and we've told the DREM.ini file or DREM2.ini to select the disk we just downloaded, I'm going to insert it into the slot here. And then of course we've got to apply power to the DREM. So let's do that now. And we'll wait for the DREM to beep a couple of times. Light comes on and it should beep twice to indicate that it has found the file. Okay, if all goes well, you'll see we have no disks in drive 0, so I should be able to power this up and we should get the XENIX boot prompt. Success! XENIX boot. Okay, at the XENIX boot prompt, this is already pre-formatted and pre-installed. We just press enter for XENIX. This will load the XENIX kernel and bootstrap it. And there we are. And you can see it does say we have about 8 megs of memory. It does see this. Now, 3.4 actually has better detection of the MMU and such. We're just going to hit Control-D to continue startup. And I tapped caps lock to turn off the caps light because, of course, XENIX, like all Unix, prefers lowercase in most cases. Or at least is case sensitive, and that case sensitiveness is usually to the lower. And today's date, XENIX 3.3 does understand dates in the now, so I'm going to go 24/1010, and it is 2025. Now this pre-configured image has daylight time turned on. You can reconfigure this. In fact, I think when I install XENIX 3.4 it's going to ask, so I should be able to fix that. Because of the number of times we've dorked with daylight saving time in the United States, the dates here don't line up. You know, typical Americans, we can't make up our mind. Anyway, the default login is root. There is no password. And for the sake of this video, I'm not going to set one up, but I usually do. Does it really matter? No, but I usually do. There's not a lot to it in terms of applications, but XENIX 3.3 does have the VI editor that we all know and love. And so for people like me who are at home in VI, all of my usual substitutions and things, most of the good stuff is here, works. The keys to jump around are a little different because you have page up and page down, so you end up having to use like F and such. But it's actually pretty straightforward, works pretty well. The compiler is CC, and I don't really, of course, there's nothing on here. I'm in / directory. Actually, let's make a user. Let's give me, oh, you got to type the E. I don't require instructions. I'm just going to be Chris. Usually on these machines I'm Chris. Default group is fine. Let's do a password. The shell type 1 is bin.sh. Perfect. Yes, I want to go. Actually, no, I don't want to change anything. I'll do comment, actually, because I do actually want to change it. Chris account, since I didn't call it TJB Chris. There we go. I don't want to change anything. And there we are. I've created my user and I've begun to move into XENIX. I don't want to add another user. And of course, the great thing about the development system is it has things like UUCP on it. You may have seen the system name there when we started up. Actually, let's configure that. I promise I won't get into my entire XENIX move in here. All right, this is going to be TRS-16B. UUCP names on these can't be very long. 7 or 8 characters, I think, but don't quote me on that, but not very long. So anyway, if I log out now, I should get my new, there we go, TRS-16B root. So if I ever decide to do a UUCP thing between these things, I have a system ID. All right, so I think now we need to upgrade to XENIX 3.4. And that's going to take a little bit of finagling because the install program expects a disk in drive 0, but drive 0 here is a physical floppy. And I don't have a physical floppy install of XENIX 3.4. I, in fact, went out to the archive and I downloaded the image, which conveniently is already in HFE format for HXC-style emulators. So what I'm going to have to do is get the emulator you saw for the Model 12 over here and connected to the 16B, and then we're going to have to do a little bit of dev shenanigans to make this work. But it's actually pretty straightforward. So to do that, I'm going to have to shut you down. And that's how easy that is. But I mean, if you didn't want to do XENIX 3.4, which, I mean, why wouldn't you? You've really got to do it. But that's how easy it is. Get the images, get them onto your DREM, and if your DREM is configured correctly and your machine is all up and in good working order, you've got yourself a XENIX box. Now, I'll remind you, XENIX requires the 68,000 board and companion memory board, so if you don't have those, if you have a Model 2 or 12, or if you are unlucky enough to have a pillaged 1616B or 6000, it's TRSDOS or CPM or LS-DOS for you. But if you've got your boards intact and they are working, XENIX isn't that far away with an emulated hard drive. That includes the Fred, folks. Just saying. You can buy hard drives. Okay, let's get the floppy drive connected up and we'll look at this. Here we are at the 16B, and I've got my floppy emulator connected to the Model 12. You can see kind of down here, got the cable here. I'm just going to disconnect the Model 12's 50-pin cable. And I actually have this cable here is actually my floppy drive cable. This is the external floppy drive bus, as I drop this. And it actually has drives 2 and 3 on it, but that's no problem. Now, of course, we're going to have to fix the drive selects on this. And this is upside down. Can I get it right side up here? Disconnect this. So the way that this is, at least for this one, the first 4 switches are the 4 drive selects for drive A. This can emulate 2 drives at once. And the last 4 are for drive B, and that's on this. Well, I only ever use A, so I'm only worried about the first 4 switches, and I want this to be drive 2. So that would mean I put on switch 3. So drive 0 is switch 1, drive 1 is switch 2, drive 2 is switch 3. There we go. This will make this drive 2. Now we're going to connect this back up. And I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to keep the light from shining on it. I have on here, on my Model 16B folder, where are we? The problem is this has to be in order. I need to find the Model 16B, or 16 folder. Yep, I think that's it. Tandy 68000 XENIX 3.4. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, perfect. Now we'll flip back around to the front, and we're going to boot XENIX up, and we're going to have to do a little bit of shell game shenanigans to make this drive appear to be drive 0 to XENIX without actually connecting it to drive 0 in the internal floppy drive connector. Let's go. Okay, I'll boot it up. My XENIX 3.4 install disk is mounted in the Lothric, of course, and we're booted up off of the DREM. We're going to log back in as root here. And to do this, we're going to exploit a nice little quirk/feature of Unix-like operating systems, and that's the dev file system. So if I look in dev, and I list all files in grep, Control-1 for the pipe, for FD, I happen to know, as this thing lists the files out, it's a little slower than I expected, but that might just be because of the length of the list. Anyway, that, of course, what the install program that the XENIX 3.4 upgrade is going to care about are the device names for the floppy drives. And specifically, it's going to be interested in the FD and RFD devices. So what I can do is those devices, specify the various major and minor numbers, 8, 0 for FD0, 1, 8 for FD1, 16, and 24 for FD2 and 3. And then for the raw floppy drive, not the block ones, that's the 5 majors. So what I can do here is pretty simple. I can move the old one to what I want and such. So what I can do here is I can move FD0 to something else. Just move FD0 to FD0.back. And I'll do the same for RFD0. If I can type. And then what I can do is move FD2. You can't copy it because it'll try and copy from the drive. FD2, FD0, RFD2 to RFD0. Now, I could swap places and put FD0 back into 2, but this is only going to be temporary for the install process. So I should be good to go. So let's do this. Let's just do a quick ls-al, Control-1 to pipe, grep, FD. And now I should see my major numbers in the spots that I expect. And there they are. 16 is now 0 for the raw disk, and the same goes for there. So now, if I did this right and I type install, it's going to ask me to insert the disk into drive 0, because the installation instructions for this, which you probably see on your screen right now, just basically have you run the XENIX install program that is used to install most Radio Shack software. We're going to go 1 to install, and I'm going to press enter, and this drive shouldn't light up, and we might even hear the Lothric. There we go. So this is going to back up the files. All of the files that it's going to change will be backed up. Gives us a nice little tarball here that we can use. And I'm not going to make you sit through all this. It does take a little time, but honestly it's not too bad. There's quite a bit of updates here. So, I mean, even DiskUtil gets an update. The assembler does. XENIX kernel, of course. And here we go, installing the new XENIX 3.4 files. And this is essentially an extraction of a tarball, which is pretty cool. You can hear the Lothrec over there doing its little floppy sounds. And I just love that this is new software, folks, from last year, I think, 2023. This is new software, new release of XENIX. This is almost as exciting as any anticipated OS upgrade that you might have done. Actually, probably more so. And if you want more info on XENIX 3.4 while this is installing, you'll find it on the Tandy Emeritus website, link in the video description. You should definitely check out their website. There's a whole lot of great products up there, and they collaborate with other folks in the Tandy community too, so you should definitely check out Tandy Emeritus. A lot of great things available for your 8-inch system. And this 16B has actually become kind of my, I don't want to say Franken system, but my upgrade system. I like to keep a lot of these systems somewhat period correct. My 16A is more so because it's got the 6000 upgrade kit from Radio Shack in it. But this machine I've decided is going to be where I put all the new cool stuff. So this has got the 8 meg upgrade, it's got the real-time clock, it's got the MMU upgrade. So this is the machine where I do a lot of this kind of thing. But even if you don't have the TE hardware, XENIX 3.4 is for you. So the shutdown command has a -Q option now to make it quick. If you have a real-time clock in here, it works. And XENIX 3.4 supports real-time clock in TRS-80GP. So there's that. 68K diags, and you've got additional diagnostic utilities. That's that hardware clock utility for the real-time clock. DiskUtil got an update. Config got an update with some new options. Obviously, there's new help files for all of the new utilities, as well as updated ones for the older utilities that got replaced. Even ioctl.h for the C compiler got replaced. And while I'm talking about that, the Model 2 archive has a bunch of newer software, like GCC, and some other more modern releases of software, whatever they could get to run. A lot of good software for XENIX 3.4. So definitely check that out on the Model 2 archive. It's under New XENIX, the New XENIX folder. If you go to Software, I'm doing this by memory, so if I get it wrong, I'll pop it over the screen calling myself a dummy. Software, XENIX, New XENIX, it's in there. There's also some games for XENIX. There's 68010 support, so you can put a 68010 CPU in this. I believe there's more to it than that, but I don't remember. We've got release notes file there for you if you want to look those over. Maybe we'll take a look at that. It's right in the root directory, so why the hell not? But it is pretty cool to me that we've got, and these machines I never thought, I mean, a lot of machines, popular new software, the Color Computer gets a ton, 134, Commodore machines, Apple machines, there's my Z80CTL, all get new stuff, but the fact that there is for these things is just freaking fabulous. Here we go, time zone, I talked about this earlier. Does daylight, I'm going to do this because this is the Tandy prompt. Daylight saving time, there's no S. I know, folks, I know, Grammar Patrol. I'm in the Eastern time zone. I don't bother with DST, because the times are all wrong. And does it matter that much? No, but this machine does have a real-time clock in it, so I can just set the clock. And the new hardware clock utility will let me update it. Time zone updated. All right, we're updating the help file. This can take a long time and probably will. And it's with that I'm going to cut to the next thing. So jump cut to this is done. Okay, we're back. If the picture looks a little different, I had the camera off for this, so I didn't need the battery up, and yeah, well, color temperature looks different, but I can't seem to get it to cooperate. Anyway, we're here. XENIX must now be rebooted to finish your installation. Let's press enter to shut down and restart XENIX. A little preview of what the shutdown command is capable of. And I'm going to hit enter here for XENIX. And there we are, XENIX 3.4 begins. See a whole bunch of new messages there. We've got 7.5 megs of memory. It went faster. It detects the MMU, and it detects the amount of memory in the system much faster. So it also sees the real-time clock is there, and the battery is good. And this release supports the virtual consoles and makes note of it on the way up. So if you have a Tandy 2000 keyboard or the Tandy Emeritus keyboard adapter, you get the benefit of multiple consoles, just like Linux. You know, Control-Alt-1 thing from back in the day. We're going to hit Control-D here, and I actually should have did the automatic boot because it would have just picked the real-time clock. I think that's F3. Regardless, I'm just going to hit enter here and let it do its thing. You see Tandy XENIX 3.4. And I'm not going to go through the whole XENIX 3.4 thing. We've covered it to a degree before. New updated version there. We'll log in as root here again. XENIX 3.4. So yeah, if you do have a custom banner, it will replace that, but it backs it up so you can bring it back. Pretty cool. So yeah, we have a whole bunch of stuff. Let me just look here. I say it's LC. Now more rel notes. Oops, gotta type the T, dummy. 3.4. And final release notes. Okay, so there's the Tandy Discord and how to get an invite, which actually, if you download XENIX 3.4, that's a great way to figure out how to get an invite to the Tandy Discord server, where all of us are. So we've got some updates here. The last update there called the time zone script that we just saw. Updated config with the hidden options to allow it to change kernel variables, time zone and DST flag. That's nice, you can change your time zone. And it's got fixed a bug in hardware clock and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to read through this for you. And yeah, new features, brand new kernel supporting detection of MMU size, automatic adjusting of memory to support what the MMU can fit. So if you don't have an MMU or you don't have the same MMU that is available from Tandy Emeritus, you might have different amounts of user memory available on these machines. And so this can tailor itself to that and adjust accordingly. So that's pretty cool. Has a crash beep feature. It's got all sorts of cool stuff. Real-time clock driver, new real-time clock HW clock utility, Etsy config to support all the latest kernel features, which I can run real quick. It's updated the assembler. It's updated Getty, which displays both the system name and the terminal in the banner. That's cool. Updates Etsy shutdown. And there's a reboot link. That's kind of fun. So you have Etsy reboot. For these older Unixes and XENIX, there are commands in the Etsy directory. So those of you who are not used to that will be surprised by that. Let's see here. And I'm not going to, like I say, go through all of them. It's got a HW clock every 30 minutes to synchronize. So if the clock gets off, it'll fix it. Updated disk util to support WD-2010 controllers, which is pretty cool. And the Z80 CTL was actually also based off of the last version that Frank Dirta4 made, so the late Frank Dirta4. So yeah, and again, there's specifics here, but lists the tar file with all the backups of everything it made. That's pretty much it. Updated version log. XENIX 3.4 is installed. So, like I said, not really going to go into the whole thing, but this machine is now move-in ready. It's got the XENIX development kit for 3.2 on there, because I think that was the last dev kit, which ran on XENIX 3.3. And of course, we're ready to install all of our applications, which will be another thing for another time, or probably something I'll just do under the covers here, because you don't need to see me install, Deskmate and MBasic and Profile 16 and all those things and just sit here. And that's pretty much it. I mean, if you didn't upgrade to 3.4, you would have been done a while ago, but honestly, upgrade to 3.4. The process is easy, the disks are there, and now we have a move-in ready system with a modern operating system on my TRS-80 Model 16B. All right, let's wrap this up. And I think that just about wraps it up for storage on the 8s. We went a little past September, but I think we covered a lot of ground with the 8-inch systems. So now you know, well, I wouldn't say everything, but almost everything you need to know about floppy disks, about hard disks, about TRSDOS, and we've given you a glimpse of how easy it is to get started when you've got one of these things all ready to go with your favorite emulator and the Model 2 archive. I encourage you to go clone the Model 2 archive, and if you don't have a big Tandy system, definitely check out TRS-80GP and play with it that way. The emulator is an excellent emulator. It emulates all sorts of systems beyond the 8-inch systems, 1, 3, 4, the TRS-80 video text terminal, color computers 1 and 2, not the 3 at the moment, but that doesn't really matter. There's other emulators for that, and all sorts of other great things. So until next time, I'm TJB Chris. Thank you for joining me on this series, and I'm not sure what's going to be next on the channel, but whatever it is, it'll be Tandy and it'll be fun. So until next time, stay classy, and thanks for joining me.